I don't think this concept of the 50-year mortgage fixes much because I've looked at the amortization schedules and I don't think it lowers the payments enough, in my opinion, to really move affordability for the buyers. I think the problem is still the prices are too high, right?
To me, it helps the first time home buyers in that 200 to 300,000 price range, where it lowers their payment by $200 or $300 is usually a massive difference for the person's approval rating.
Welcome to Silberman Realty's Property Desk Podcast, Episode 8, where we talk all things residential real estate in Texas. Today is December 30th, 2025. I'm Phil Silberman, owner of the company and your host, and I'm joined by my co-host today, Robert Vernon, who's a real estate agent with Silberman Realty.
Hey guys, how you doing today?
Doing very well myself, Robert. So what's give a good Christmas?
Yeah, not too bad. Did a little bit of traveling around the country, visiting family, but overall pretty good. Kids had a good Christmas. How about yours?
Yeah, it was great. We're back here shooting the show the day before New Year's Eve. So that's dedication.
Yes, sir.
That is
Absolutely.
dedication.
Everybody else doesn't know what day of the week it is, and we're here talking real estate.
There we go. We're committed to our listeners. Let's talk about today on our show. We're going to talk about 2 or 3 different things. One first topic is this. There's a popular idea about fixing this rate lock problem, okay? And that everybody's stuck in these mortgage rates. And because really super low rates, sellers don't want to sell because they don't want to go to a higher rate. So we're going to talk about some ideas on fixing that. And then we're going to answer some real estate questions about photographs when you're listing homes and then general property management.
Good.
Let's go ahead and get it started with this idea of this rate lock. Currently, U.S. mortgages, they have a due on sale clause in them. Basically, when you sell a house, the thing's got to be paid off, and then you have to transition into a higher market rate. So right now, everybody's around 3%, or a lot of people around 3%, and they don't want to trade that bargain that they've got for 6 or 7%. That's our U.S. system. That's not the case in all countries. So for example, in Denmark, I just learned this, that they do have a system where you can keep that lower rate and still move to another house. That sounds like an amazing thing, don't you think?
Yeah, it definitely would unlock a lot of that pent up demand that we're seeing, but quick and easy fix as you would think it would be in that regard. But go ahead and give me some about this. Let's tell listeners how this would actually help.
These are not my original thoughts. So let me just preface it with that. This was an article, an opinion piece in the Wall Street Journal, and this has been floating around for a long time. But so here's how it works. Okay. So instead of paying off if you're a seller and you go and sell a property, and instead of paying off that loan at that very low rate of interest, what's going to happen is a finance guy, a number cruncher guy is going to calculate what the present value of the amount of money you would need to buy a bunch of US-backed treasury bonds to pay, and how much interest and how much needs to be taken out of that, and how much amount is going to go into this account with all these bonds. And then you buy the bonds, so the bank is happy. The money is invested in those U.S. Treasury securities. It's going to generate exactly enough cash flow to continue making the original mortgage payments.
So I got a question. Let me stop you real quick. If the government is going to be buying these cheaper loan payments that are due and creating a whole new account for who to manage and who the rates aren't one fixed rate all the time when it comes to securities. So it's a fluctuating thing. Someone's going to have to pretty much manage that portfolio for the government. And the way that you've already mentioned it so far, where's the incentive, government?
So a couple of things. The incentive for the government is just the government's job is to keep people moving, and our GDP and our economy is so dependent on home transactions, all the way from Home Depot to realtors to title companies, that the government has a vested interest in this. The U.S. government has been doing this for a long time. That's why we have the HUD, Housing and Urban Development. That's exactly what HUD is designed to do. That's why we do these FHA loans. That's why we started securitizing loans. That's why Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac basically came into creation to facilitate the free flow of loans and keep the American dream alive.
Dream alive. I got you. Yeah. And that seems like it's fitting a small segment of people who already have a home. And the problem what we have right now is there's a whole bunch of renters and people on the sidelines who can't afford into the marketplace. This program helps boomers, millennials who bought early on, people who are already in these fixed rates. It's not bringing these new buyers back into the fold because all this is going to do is, in my opinion, probably keep elevated prices. If you're selling, you're still buying in the 6.5% interest rate market. So that doesn't really help the renter and the person on the sideline who hasn't been able to get into a home yet. So I think it does help solve that segment of the issue right now. But also it's okay, who's going to manage these portfolios? What's the main incentive for the government? If you do these types of deals, what kind of fees are you looking at title? There's going to be some kind of government fees, some origination of the security fee from the government. You could end up spending $10,000 to $15,000 in additional closing costs, your mortgage over.
You might, there may be some additional fees.
I'm just playing devil's advocate for you on the deal.
I got you. There are a lot of programs for new home buyers. That's why the FHA essentially, the loan amount, the 3.5% down. There's a lot of first-time homebuyer tax credits and incentives. There's that going on. This is a program that's specifically going to solve the problem, hopefully,
for that specific segment.
And the idea is if you can get these sellers to start trading and putting their homes on the market, then we're gonna make a dent in this supply and inventory problem. And that's going to have downward price pressure. That's the idea. Now, as far as the mechanics of it, I don't think the mechanics of it are that hard. Your rate on a bond is a fixed rate. Okay. So if you've got the example we have here is you've got a $355,000 loan and you calculate the value, say interest rates are paying on bonds or might be 6% or something like that, 5%. Maybe you only need to buy $250,000 of bonds and that at a fixed rate at that time. And then the bank continues to get their payments. And instead of it being backed by the seller's house, now the collateral ends up being these bonds, hence the term swap. Now,
that makes sense. I'll look at it this way. The government needs people to buy or needs governments or big corporations to buy government bonds. And we're losing a huge player in that market in Japan. And let's just say 10% of these loans do it. We have a $12 trillion residential real estate market. You just influxed tens of trillions of dollars, probably $5 trillion into the US bond market that wasn't there originally. That could have an adverse effect on the itself, but it also allows people to bring more money into the U.S. government bond market, which is what we need to survive.
That's an excellent point. I don't think I've seen that point before. And what Robert's saying is it's possible that in the process of these swaps, so the money being taken out of a seller's equity, essentially, and then that money being used to buy bonds, could create a huge amount of demand in the bond market and causing bond prices to go up and interest rates to fall because we know bond prices and interest rates work inversely. But that could be a good thing. That could lower interest rates in the bond market. Who knows? But the idea, I think, is a good one. And sometimes you pick the lesser of two evils. And just the idea of all these sellers being locked in have been such a problem for inventory that some of the negative effects that may potentially come of this may be worth the risk.
There's another one that's being thrown around too, which is the 50-year mortgage. I know a lot of people don't like that because, you're paying X amount of money in interest over a 50-year loan. In my opinion, most people don't keep their loans for their entire term. This allows the market to get opened up for people who can afford a monthly payment where they can't afford it now. It keeps the prices elevated. It gets the people moving again because now, let's say you need to trade up to the bigger house. You've had more kids, but you've got that low rate. you like that price per month. Most people look at the price per month. And if they can get that fixed by moving into that bigger house, adding more years to their mortgage, in theory, they'll sit there maybe 3 to 7 years on that mortgage. Maybe things will get better for them. They can refinance out of that 50-year mortgage to a lower term. That fixed both problems to me. But I think the scary thing that people see is, oh, you're going to spend hundreds of thousands more over a 50-year term. And I just don't think that's likely for most folks.
Yeah, I've heard Trump float the idea of the 50-year mortgage.
And he's floated this other idea too that you've been talking
I
about.
haven't seen Trump being a proponent of that, but maybe he is. And I don't think this concept of the 50-year mortgage fixes much, because I've looked at the amortization schedules and I don't think it lowers the payments enough, in my opinion, to really move affordability for the buyers. I think the problem is still the prices are too high, right?
To me, it helps the first-time home buyers in that 200 to 300,000 price range, where it lowers their payment by $200 or $300. Is usually a massive difference for the person's approval rating in that segment of
Yeah, they
population.
can get approved for more. Maybe that will help. Yeah, maybe that will help. So, all right, well,
lots of changes coming in 2026. That's for sure. We just don't know what they will be, but
we'll see if any of this gets through. But there are some interesting ideas trying to de-thaw this frozen inventory market right now. There's actually one more thing we want to talk about: capital gains tax. And this is important as well before we answer some of the real estate questions. You may know this, Robert. This seemed like a huge number when I was in college. I remember taking a personal finance class in college many years ago. And the professor said, "Oh, we've got this great thing in the United States. If when you go to sell your primary residence, if you're married, you get a windfall. You don't have to pay taxable gains on 500 grand, up to 500 grand." And then she said, "Oh, and anybody who makes more than 500 grand on a house, I don't feel sorry for them because they're just that uber wealthy. They deserve to pay."
things have changed a little.
It's currently 250. If you're single, you get 250. If you're married, you get 500 exemption on your capital gains tax. Those limits were set in 1997. So we haven't had any inflation adjustments. Home prices have effectively quadrupled. So a normal home in 1997 was 230. That might sell for like over $1 million today.
Easily, yeah. There's a lot of things that the government has pegged prices to the 80s and the 90s that have not changed. And there's a lot of different things. So yeah, that would need to change.
So the idea is, let's just double it, right? $1 million exemption for married people, 500 for single. That still may not get it done, but at least it's something, right? At least we're moving in the right direction. That may encourage, along the same vein of what we're talking about, that may encourage some of these sellers to sell if they're not paying a huge capital gains tax, and maybe they can take that rate with them if we can develop a swap system.
Yeah. Port mortgage system.
All right. So now we've covered that topic, we can, in fact, answer some real estate questions today. Here's some listing questions. I don't know why these came up, but here they are. What do you think about photographing property this time of year? If you real photographs, people have their holiday decorations up. What do you think about photographing properties where the Christmas tree and the holiday decorations are up and then listing it right now? Or do you just tell people to wait?
If you're serious about selling your house and getting some good activity, I would hope that you would have the wherewithal to take down your holiday decorations for the picture. Sure. Luckily, in today's world, with the way that we can just edit photos on the fly with our cell phone, you could probably just circle the Christmas tree and get it out of there with an AI image editor. That definitely helps. But prior, definitely, it was always funny whenever you pull up a listing and you see the Christmas tree lights on a Christmas tree in the living room and the presents under the tree. No one wants to see your personal effects. You should even take down your personal pictures like I have right up here above me. But if you're never showing your house, no one wants to stand around and look at your photos. You want them to look at the property. Yeah. And I'm definitely in agreement that should not.
Maybe this question or my question was too antiquated, but yeah, you're right. I'm not a big fan of, if you're listening to something in January or March or whatever, for still having.
Sometimes you have to. You got to list it. At least we don't have the snow problem in Texas. You look at listings in like Colorado or in the Northeast, and it's just covered in snow. And it's like, what can you do? As a photographer, you send them out that day. It could be a week before you get to this.
And this brings us to the next related listing photo question. Is you're talking about AI editing photos with, what do you think about some of these houses with really bad custom paint jobs and terrible furniture? Are you a fan of using these AI generated new paint and new furniture staged and putting and not having the actual real photos in the listing?
I'm not opposed to the staging aspect. It definitely allows a buyer to visualize the room a little bit better, get a little bit better of an idea of the space
Mhm.
itself. But changing the color paint, and now you're just false advertising at that point. You're looking at a listing that looks like a totally different house than when you go in and look at it. Unless you're going to disclose that, hey, these images were doctored with AI, then you're really just bait switching
Yeah,
people.
I'm not a fan of that either. I do think it's a little deceptive. What the realtors tend to do is they put the AI photos up and then there is a tiny disclaimer that says, "Hey, not actual photo," or whatever. I think it's terrible because I don't know if I want to go look at the house unless I know what everything looks like, but that's the idea. What if you're like a car dealer and you've got some used car and it's some terrible custom paint job that's like bright orange with the black racing stripe or whatever, and you AI out the better color of the car, that's certainly not allowed, is it? But
Correct. Yeah. Why would it be allowed in houses then? So
they're doing
I
it all.
agree.
They're doing it all the time. All right. Next question. Hey, Robert, have you heard of Flex or Flex Rent? Do you know how this works? Have you heard of this in Appfolio and had some of our tenants using this thing?
I saw it come up as a new feature the other day, and I looked at it and I was just like, this is just the pay as you go. Like when you go buy something online, it gives you like 4 or 5 flex easy payments. I feel like the whole world's moving to this flex easy payment system. I don't really like it when it comes to rent. Your rent should be due at the first of the month. And, we always have that option to where in a pinch, a sizable fee, you could pay with a credit card and you take on that risk, consumer, not us. And that would be my thought on that. There's some things in this world that's good for flex pay. I don't think your housing should fit that.
Here's the idea. The way it rolled out, and we use Appfolio as our primary property management system, and it wasn't given to us well as an option. You had to opt out of it. So all of a sudden, tenants were just able to pay with flex rent. And I didn't really notice a difference. The big benefit to the landlord is they still get their money. We, as the property manager or the landlord, still get the money on time, but the tenant is using flex rent to smooth out their payment. So instead of having a massive lump sum due on the first, the tenants pay the portion of the rent at the beginning of the month and then the remainder later in the month. Technically,
They have the ability to do that. They can pay rent 15 times a month if they want. But if it's the flex rent allowing them to pay future
yeah,
rent on a flex, that's to me where you draw.
I'm not fully sure I understand how this works. Technically, it's all like 0% loan to the tenant, but I guess if let's say you've got $3,000 rent due on the first and you're the tenant on the first comes along and you pay 1,500. And then on the 15th, you pay another 1,500 to Flex Rent is forwarding the entire money to us of 3,000 on the first. So we don't care. And then what does Flex Rent get? That is a loan. It's 0% loan for a period of 15.
I guess it's just like another creditor. If they don't end up paying the rent, then they're gonna have to come out. To me, it's no different than just using any other line of credit for your.
The Flex Rent, they're not doing this for free. They say it's 0%, but actually they're charging like, I think 15 bucks a month. I don't hate it. I'm not sure landlords, property managers, we care about it that much. Here's the tenants are effectively paying some money for the float. The business model is as simple as if the Flex Rent's average float is $1,500 for half a month, okay? They are based, and let's say the flex rent cost of the money, because they've got some big bank loan out there, some big line of credit out there from some huge bank for millions and millions of dollars. Let's say flex rent's cost is 5%. And if the average float is $1,500, then that costs them $75 a year to have $1,500 their cost. So if it's for half a month, it's only costing flex rent about $6. If they're charging the tenant 15 bucks, okay, for this, the tenant is flex rent is making a pretty good return. Flex rent is making almost like 7, $8 on that money being out. So I think that's the flex rent business model. It's a genius business model. The tenants are basically paying
It's just like everything else. Everything's moving to flex pay options. You can flex pay
Yeah.
a dollar menu cheeseburger at McDonald's and pay over 4 months if you want to nowadays. So let's just add it to the rent portion of the world too.
Everything is on credit.
Absolutely.
I just want to be clear, the tenants out there, it may be insignificant. I think the tenants, just rough math, I think the tenants are basically paying 12% to float $1,500 all year long, something like that. I don't.
Just like with any flex pay, don't do it unless you absolutely to. Otherwise, you're just costing yourself
We
unneeded
think that's
costs.
the model,
So
but I don't. It doesn't to
yeah,
landlords, tenants doesn't matter to us too much. I don't think. I haven't noticed it.
yeah, I don't think it would. I think it's looking at it that way, it's better for us and our landlords to get the money up front than to collect it through eviction. JP.
I don't have
So
any interest. I don't think, Robert, we have any interest in promoting it to our tenants. I'm not sure why we would promote it. Maybe Flex Rent.
it's an
Yeah,
option.
maybe Flex Rent is going to be
Yeah.
this billion. Maybe they already are. I don't know. Are they going to be this $1 billion publicly traded company? It's a great business idea. All right. That brings our show to a close. I've been your host, Phil Silberman. Robert Vernon has been my co-host. Like us, follow us, review us wherever you get your podcast. And as a reminder, nothing in this show is to be considered legal advice or investment advice, and this has all been for entertainment purposes only. If you have a question about real estate or something else you'd like us to cover, email us at info@silbermanrealty.com and tell us you want it publicly answered in the podcast. Everybody have a great New Year's and the rest of your week.
Happy New Year's.